Hey you guys, welcome back to Rocket City Yardstead. If you're new, I'm Sarah. Welcome. So today we are out in the garden. We are getting ready to deal with Francine. If you don't know what Francine is, it's probably not coming to your neck of the woods, but we are supposed to, in the next couple of days, get maybe like 2 to 3 inches of rain in a relatively short amount of time, have wind gusts maybe 30 to 40 miles an hour. So nothing super major, but when you've got a garden, it can be detrimental. So I need to do quite a bit of harvesting and get things off the plants before we get all of that rain. And I also need to work on pinning up my tomato plants a bit more thoroughly, just to make sure that they're not going to get whipped around and broken in the wind. So I thought we could do some harvesting and garden maintenance together today. One of the big things I really kind of wanted to work on is here where I have all of this growth on these tomato plants. If you've been with me a while, then you know that my tomatoes were not doing great this year. I weeded and I fertilized, and they have just bounced back with a vengeance. I also think it really helps that we have been in the 80s lately, but my ideal here is I really don't want to have to use tomato clips. I'm trying to more weave my plants through my cattle panels, because the tomato clips that I've been using the last few years, they just get so brittle during the summer and all of the sunshine, and I guess the UV breaks them down, and I just find myself really reluctant to use something that's going to only last me for one season. So I'm just trying to weave tomatoes through the cattle panel, and hopefully that will work well enough to deal with the wind gusts. There's always a fine line between weaving and breaking. Never fails. I seem to accidentally break something off. So being gentle is really important. There we go. This tomato plant here, it is significantly taller than my cattle panel and has fallen down. And normally I just let them do their thing at this point. But with this wind, I guess I'm going to try and weave it through. The truth is, it has been, goodness, it's been years since we've had the remnants of a hurricane come through here. The last few years, they've all gone to our east. And so we did get a little bit of wind, but I don't think anything like what we're expecting tomorrow. At least not when I've had cattle panels full of tomatoes. So I think I'm going to try and pin this to the cattle panel or weave it through some. Normally I would just let it go, but they're covered in flowers and I really want the tomatoes. So let's see. Here. Blossom and rot. That's a bummer. So you guys, it's already pretty windy. I don't know how well this is going to come through on the camera, but I just found where one of my tomato plants has escaped and has partly grown up this zinnia. So there's a couple of tomatoes growing mixed into the zinnia plant. I'll take them. So before I get to harvesting, I wanted to show you guys these baskets I got. If you've never gone basket shopping at the Goodwill, you should give it a try. These were somewhere around $3 each. I was up in St. Louis to go to a concert with my niece, and we went to Goodwill. And I found these, and I was thrilled. In past videos you've probably seen, I just use like the plastic buckets I get when I go get strawberries at my local farm in the spring. But I keep cracking those, and I wanted something a little bit more sturdy. This one in particular I love. I don't know what they thought the intended purpose was, but I think maybe they thought people were going to plant in it because it's got a liner, which is fantastic for harvesting my stuff. So anyway, check the Goodwill if you need harvesting baskets. These never-ending cucumber plants of mine, they're so sad, and yet they're still giving me the occasional beautiful cucumber. So I'm going to be grateful while they keep going. You guys were with me a few videos ago. You heard me talk about my sunrise bumblebees and how there was this one tomato and it is ripe, so we're going to pick it. My serranos picked. Some jalapenos to pick as well. I think my eggplants, they are quite small, but I think I'm going to pick them just because they weigh the plants down a lot. And I would hate for my plants to get broken in the wind, having these on them. Ignore the weeds, but there's the first of my yellow squash to germinate that I planted recently, so I'm very excited about that. You guys, I've been negligent. My okra plants have just taken forever to take off this year, and they started giving me okra. However, it was giving me like 2 or 3 pieces of okra at a time. They weren't lasting long enough for me to get more okra, and so I just sort of stopped checking on it. Don't be me. Just look at this piece of okra. It's longer than my hand and definitely rock hard. I'm actually a little bit surprised. This one still is kind of tender. We're going to try it, but I am going to pick the smaller okra. And even the really tiny ones like this, because if it's raining cats and dogs tomorrow, I'm not coming out here picking okra in the rain. But don't let your okra get gigantic. Let me be a cautionary tale. I think there might actually be enough out here to have a nice side dish too, so that's great. I think that's all the okra. 2 nice handfuls of decent okra. So even ones like this guy, he's just slightly blushing, but he will be split and no good if I wait. So one of the biggest things I wanted to get done out here today before that rain comes with Francine is to pick all of the dried bean pods off of my bean trellis. So on this side, I have Trail of Tear pole beans. They're a black bean inside. And on this side, I grew rattlesnake pole beans, which you can eat as a green bean, but I specifically grew for the beans inside. They're supposed to be good as a replacement for pinto beans. So I'm going to keep them in separate baskets, and I'm going to get to picking these. I don't know how long this is going to take me, but it needs to be done. I love a good time lapse. This actually ended up taking me about half an hour to pick all of these beans off of this trellis, which isn't too bad. But they were sort of camouflaged, and every time I thought I'd had them all, I'd just take a step and be at a slightly different angle, and I'd see more than I needed to pick. So I am not complaining about finding more food, but as I got farther down, I also have more things growing on this trellis, which I'll talk about here in a minute, but they sort of hid things as well. So all in all, I felt like this was maybe a good harvest. I haven't had the chance to shell these beans yet, so we'll see what I actually end up with. But this was sort of an experiment this year, trying to grow drying beans, and we'll see what we actually get and if it's a good use of my trellis space. I may end up going back to just growing regular green beans next year. Here we have it, you guys, my 2 baskets for the harvest today. So this basket is full of my Trail of Tears black beans. This one has my eggplants, tomatoes, peppers, all of that stuff, and my rattlesnake pole beans on top. So I'm feeling pretty good about today's harvest. I did want to take you guys back here and show you, I have volunteer plants. So the beans are still growing, actually. They're putting on flowers, which is really surprising to me. But last year I grew, I can't remember the variety, but it was some kind of cowpea. And the birds came, they did a massive amount of pecking on the cowpeas up on the top of the trellis. And they're volunteer cowpeas and they're taking over. So I'm going to take you back there and show you that. First, here you can see the beans are still growing. That is a bean flower. I don't see any blossoms on the cowpeas right now. So here are some of the cowpeas. This is a cowpea. They are just most of what is all over this side of the cattle panel. You can see how nice and thick it is. And so I may actually have cowpeas to harvest by the end of the season. There are cowpeas all over the place. The last thing I want to harvest while I'm out here is a bouquet of flowers. We're going to spend days without being able to come out because it's raining. I want some pretty flowers in the house. And my last bouquet is starting to look sad. Does anybody else pick all of the leaves off while you're still outside? I just don't really see the point in taking them in the house. So I'm going to finish picking flowers and then we'll look at what our haul was when we get inside. Here we have it, guys, the mid-September pre-Francine harvest. So we've got all of the drying beans picked. This basket is the Trail of Tears black beans. This basket is the rattlesnake pole beans. We got a few cups of cherry tomatoes. Most of those are just blushing, and so they're going to need a little bit of time to ripen. Some sweet peppers, some Anaheims, some hot peppers. I don't think I've mentioned, but with the serranos and the jalapenos, I've just been bringing them in when they're starting to turn and letting them finish ripen. And I've been prepping them and just putting them in the freezer. And my plan is to do a batch of hot sauce when I get enough peppers all at once. Let's see. We also got a nice handful of okra, a couple of cucumbers, a handful of small eggplants, but they'll definitely feed us, and flowers because they count. They're cheerful. They make everything beautiful, even if you don't eat them. So I feel like today was pretty productive. We got those tomatoes all pinned up, and so hopefully they're going to withstand any wind gusts that we get. And I'm just really happy with the progress of today. So thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see you next time. Bye.